I'm delighted to have with me here today Belinda Parmar OBE. Belinda I've known for a number of years and always fascinates me because she's been talking for years about the world of empathy and how we've got to get better in terms of how we relate to people both from a work and a professional perspective. And obviously, in the middle of the pandemic, this has come to the forefront more than ever. So good morning, Belinda.
Hi, Nick. It's so nice to be with you. Well, virtually.
How's it changed? What's your you've been talking about this for a number of years, and now obviously we're all feeling it as much as we're talking about it. How has the conversation moved on, or are we just catching up with where we should be?
Well, I think empathy is no longer a luxury. There will be a mental health pandemic, and ultimately we need empathy to manage people's emotions, their well-being, and to help them navigate through the next 6 months, which is going to be different, but equally different for people.
And was it always, were we going that way, or have we been forced into this?
I think that, if you look at some of the studies, only pre-COVID, only 1 in 10 people were actually engaged in their jobs. Now, that's shocking. If you think about the amount of time we spend at work, which is approximately 50 years of our lives, which is more time than we're going to spend with our families.
It scares me, that, yes.
So scary. And if you think only 1 in 10 people were actually engaged before, I think what COVID has done has given us the opportunity to reset work. It wasn't working before. And what we've seen some brilliant things in terms of people working at home, people having more flexibility, better role modeling from leaders, showing more vulnerability. But we've also seen fear and anxiety go up. So we've got this opportunity to reset business, to make it more empathic in terms of the way we communicate, the way we lead, but ultimately the way we make money. Empathy is correlated to money.
And do you think this is a kind of a new wave of businesses and how they operate, or do you think it's a shift in terms of existing leadership and kind of team dynamics as to how we will operate within those companies that exist already?
Well, what you've got is, before, you've got these very powerful systems, and those organizations are often more powerful than the individual itself. So what we're seeing now is a shift in leadership. We're seeing more strength in vulnerability, more managing emotions as well as managing productivity. We're seeing that concern for others that we didn't see so much before. But what we haven't got is that physical structure. So what we're going to see in the future is more of a hybrid model. So the CEOs that I'm working with, they think approximately 50% of people's time will be at home and 50% will be at work. And they need to start thinking about how they navigate that as leaders.
And are they geared up to this? Do they know what they're doing? Or are they kind of, in terms of your conversations, are people out there seeking advice and getting the right guidance? Or are they still being that alpha CEO who has to position themselves as knowing everything?
I am definitely seeing more self-reflection from the CEOs I work with. And that is a brilliant thing, because the most important thing about empathy is that self-reflection, getting feedback, but having those very difficult conversations. Because empathy is not about sympathy. It's not what my niece calls a pity party. It's ultimately about really having difficult conversations in a very adult to adult way. So I am seeing more self-reflection. I'm seeing more self-awareness and more appetite for empathy. But ultimately, it's quite a different environment because people are not in this hybrid model. So what the worst thing that could happen is this shift that you're talking about is a temporary shift. The world of business has to change, and empathy is a big part of that.
Pre-COVID, you were talking about this, and you were kind of trying to educate us all about how we should be. So do you see it as a sort of frustration that we as a society weren't more geared up for it, and we've had to adapt so dramatically over the last year?
So what I'm seeing in terms of empathy is a much more in-depth and a much more profound embedding of empathy. So, for example, clients are interested now in the way using empathy to run meetings, to measure people, how they feel and their emotions, to ultimately to have these honest conversations. So I think before empathy was on the table, but ultimately it was often a tick box exercise. It was the pet project of the CEO or one individual's mantra coming into the company. What I'm seeing now is a much more collective desire for empathy and a willingness to put budget, resource, but ultimately time against this, because it's hard. It's easy to do what we've always done. But what this pandemic does is it gives us an opportunity to really shift things and transform the way we work and make it more meaningful for everyone.
So I love that. I suppose the interesting part for me was something you said just at the beginning of that, which was around the fact that it's almost self-selecting, because the people that you are speaking to and working with are people who've already made that first leap. Have you got any tips or kind of things we should be looking for in terms of how we, maybe those of us who haven't made that leap, should be asking ourselves or acting on in order to take it to the next level above and beyond maybe a surface relationship to the end?
If you're going to think about empathy in your companies, you've got to think about how you measure it. So there's three key kind of questions. Number one is, do the people in your team feel heard? The second thing is, do they feel visible? And ultimately, do they feel like they're not alone? Because at the heart of an empathic culture is the feeling of belonging. And on a Zoom call, it's very different to how it would be in person, because I could read your body language, but you can't. So you have to manage that, and you have to measure it. So a lot of what we're doing is emotional polling. We do polls. We use that polling software to find out if people feel they have a voice. The second thing is ultimately about your own self-awareness and really thinking, getting that feedback and having those difficult conversations with other people about your performance. Now is the opportunity to really reset your own leadership style and evolve, because we're all work in progress. Empathy is not you're not empathic or you're not. It's very much a learned skill. It's like a muscle. You have to keep practicing it. And I think I can't stress about the meeting culture. If you want to be more empathic, making sure that everyone have a voice on the Zoom call. There's lots of collaborative software you can use now, which measures who speaks, how many times people are interrupted. There's some fantastic tools out there, and it's really important that you actually start to use collaborative software to understand how people feel.
Wonderful, love that. Thank you. One last question, and then I appreciate kind of just, but look at it from the other way around in terms of actually the employees. You spoke about the leadership, what they can be doing. Are there tools or, again, kind of anything they should be doing in order to help their company become more embracing of this new age that we're in?
Well, I think empathy is everyone's responsibility. I think if you take a company like Microsoft, Satya Nadella, he came in, he talked about empathy and empowerment, but ultimately it was everyone's responsibility. So you can't just put it as one part of the organization. I think one of the key things is empathy and language that we can all do. We talk about people in business as assets. We talk about our colleagues as stakeholders. Rather than say someone's done a good job, we talk about optimization. I didn't wake up and think, oh, you know what, when I grow up, I want to be a stakeholder. We need to humanize business, and that empathy and language is such a big part of that. So I feel that is everyone's responsibility, and language is one of the most powerful tools we have.
Belinda Parmar, thank you so much indeed for your time. It's been an honour and privilege as always, and look forward to speaking again soon.
Thank you so much, Nick. I've really enjoyed it.